has come all the way from WA, is regarded as one of the world's leading immersive storytellers. We are extremely privileged to have him here because he literally lives on a plane at the moment, flying around the world at huge demand from film studios, game companies, commercial companies, to help them use some of these new techniques that he's going to talk to you about today. And you'll get a chance to see some of his work. I guess I can let the cat out of the bag. You'll see some little brochures and flyers around. Stu has a very exciting art exhibition happening at the Noosa Regional Gallery, which we are very, very excited about. So not only will you see him today, but you'll see his work at the Regional Gallery and online, I hope, after he inspires you today, and in the demo and expo this afternoon. Dr. Stu Campbell.
Get that working. Hello everybody. Just like to acknowledge the traditional owners and thanks for the beautiful welcome to country. And yeah, so I'm Stu Campbell, also known as Sutu. I've been creating sort of interactive story experiences for the last 15 years or something like that. And over that time, I've just explored kind of every technology under the sun, I guess, and migrated from sort of doing web-based stuff to iPad stuff when the iPads came out, to installations, kind of bespoke projects for museums and things like that. And more recently, I've moved into virtual reality, and I also run an augmented reality company, so those are the two kind of big things at the moment that everybody's super excited about. But before I jump straight into that, I want to give you a bit of background on some of the previous projects that sort of frame that trajectory for me. So about 10 years ago, I started like a interactive web series, which was actually all about sort of like imagining a youth culture in the future where people, the young people, are all like using virtual reality and augmented reality, and they've created their own sort of youth subculture out of it, and they're walking down the streets and they're sort of imagining and putting their artworks kind of floating between the buildings and this kind of thing, and it created like a layer of art over the city. So I started that as a fictional concept 10 years ago in a comic book, interactive comic book format, and now 10 years later I find myself becoming kind of that character from my comic book in a way, which is very funny for me, but also super exciting because it's like my dream is finally coming to reality. So here is a bit of a trailer of when we ported that story to the iPad. And this was so like an interactive iPad comic, and you could sort of swipe through the pages and access this kind of overlay of sort of digital animation over the physical reality of the comic book story. And the character is kind of tripping out because his kind of perception of reality is becoming blurred. You can't really tell what's real anymore and what's fiction. But it was also an experiment of the iPad at the time, so exploring the different features of the iPad, what you can do when you touch the screen and move the iPad around, and how you can use those different mechanisms to progress through the story and make it a more interactive experience for the user. I'm just going to keep skipping through because I know that we're short on time. So this is kind of taking a bit of a tangent, but when I create these projects, it usually opens the door to some other project. So I was invited up to the Aboriginal community in Roban in northern Western Australia after they had seen that iPad comic, and I was invited there by the community and by an arts organisation called Big Art, who's a social justice community sort of development arts organisation that's been around for 20 years. And I was first invited there just to say hello and meet the community, and then we got talking, and I absolutely loved it there, and I really had a great opportunity and quite a privilege to start working with the young people of the community. And we hung out a lot, and not only with the young people but with the elders, drank a lot of cups of tea, the most tea I've ever drunk in my life, I think, but just to sit down and listen and hear some stories. And we established that what we wanted to do with the community was to focus on the young people, start to tell some positive stories with the community, but also to imagine kind of what the future's going to be like from now into the future. And this is where we started to collaborate, and I expressed my sort of interests in science fiction and action and these kind of fun concepts, which of course every kid loves those ideas as well. And we kind of met in the middle, where we I was introduced to the mythology and all the wonderful stories of that area. And like Brent talking this morning, there's so many stories from these different areas. And so what we then tried to do was create a fusion of this ancient mythology meets like this futuristic concept, where the young people were still the custodians of their land, and they're up against the new challenges of the future as the mining industry is replaced with space tourism. And the space tourism is colonizing other planets and stuff like that. And it's this new narrative of, wait a minute, you guys can't just go into that other planet. You got to respect that place. And then the young people are driving the narrative of what it means to actually sort of pay attention to the places that you're visiting. And it was a really interesting sort of vehicle to explore that premise. And but most exciting for me was that I actually co-created the comic with the kids. So I'll show you what that looked like.
Hi, we're the Love Plumbers, and we made the Neomat comic. We used Photoshop to color in the comic. When you do Photoshop, it's very complicated, and you have to make sure all the costumes and the colors are all the same, so it looks perfect. The best person at the Photoshop is Nathaniel. If you want to do it neater and quicker, you must link the layer. And the second one is me. And the third one is me. EJ, not you. Yes, it's me!
What made you think to use these colours?
So I thought we wanted to make an army color.
That looks like he's got stripy stockings on.
Well, I put it on him so it can look like a love bug. We went to the Robin house to record our voices so we can put it into the comic.
Edwin, Darren, what are you doing?
So we'll have speech bubbles up above us.
I'm coming, love punks, I'm coming.
In the comic, my name is Karawara.
They were carrying me.
And I named you Karawara, shooting star.
In the comic, my name is Born Ready, and I got a little pet named Stanley the Chain Color, and he's what this.
Look at that, Stanley. It's so pretty.
So obviously you can see how fun that would be, and the beautiful thing about it was that obviously the kids learnt a lot of technical skills and got to start to flex some really powerful storytelling muscles that they have ingrained in them all. Obviously they're very well at telling their story, but also like when you tap on the speech bubble in the comic, you hear their voices, and they're actually introducing words in language in the Injibandi and Nulama languages, so you can see the word in that language in the comic, and then when you tap on it, translates to the English translation. So you've got these little simple technical modifications like that. Is such a huge opportunity for us to start sharing languages and do it in a really fun, creative way. So after I did that, like with every project I do, I explore new technologies, and then we basically develop a lot of like new tools for storytelling. So that incorporated some new animation techniques, some new interactive techniques. That becomes like a bag of tricks that I carry around with me, and I take it into the next project so that I don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. So for me, the next project was augmented reality had just started coming out, and people were starting to use their mobile phones, and you could sort of hold your phone over physical objects or the physical reality and access a new layer of digital information. So I made the world's first augmented reality comic book. When you hold your phone over the pages, they come to life with animation and sound. And I've got a few of these books over there on display, and we can have a look at them a bit later. And this was the story of a paranoid time traveller, and he actually hid all his secret notes in that layer of augmented reality. So a lot of the times when I do these projects, I mean, that could be considered a bit of a gimmick, but if you actually try to introduce the interactivity in a way that it supports the narrative, then it's no longer a gimmick. So basically in this situation, there's one story on the printed page, but then there's a second story that you can access through the phone. And you're kind of like a detective almost, and you kind of really got to inspect the pages to discover that story, and then you find yourself reading what's on the phone and what's on the book, and you're trying to decide which story you want to believe. So it was a fun project that was really about just exploring that new technology in a fun way. And the beautiful thing that, again, like when I create these projects, I've just invented this sort of new technology that I'm super excited about, and then I start to do little experiments just to see what else I can do with it. And
Don't try to get away, Max.
So these little experiments, what I found was really exciting was if we just cut out some of the shapes and then I give it to people, then they start playing with it. And that agency of just giving them that thing to play with, they start to create their own sort of experience out of it. And I've done that a lot, like the little one of the eyeball sticker where the worm pops out. I gave that little eyeball sticker to a bunch of kids, and immediately they just went and stuck it in the dog's butt. And that, I mean, that one sticker kept those kids entertained for like an hour. And so it was so that you can kind of see. And the one of the tattoo, like I put that up on my Instagram just saying, oh, I can't believe that worked. And then the next morning it ended up on the morning news in America, and it had like 2 million views online. And then I was like, holy shit, I have to go and edit that post and put the link to the book, because it was the character for the book. So we sold a ton of books that week, which was wonderful. Which is also an important point. Like a lot of these digital things people don't want to pay for because digital is kind of seen as free, but then having it linked to physical objects, people still value physical objects. So where you can sell the books and artists can get paid for their hard work, which is great. So after doing these experiments, I got contacted by a lot of artists who were like, I want to make augmented reality art. And so I decided to open up my platform to a bunch of artists and invite them to use the technology. And the result of that project was this beautiful book, which I'm super proud of. It features over 45 artists from around the world, guys, girls, so many different countries, all interpreting it in their own unique way with their own unique art style. And this book is also on display over here, and there's copies of it available. And it was an opportunity for me and my co-founder, Lucas Carluke. We run this company together called iJack, to start to think about how we can start sharing more of our technology. And that's a focus for us now as we kind of get more organised, I guess. It's very kind of tricky. But it's again was like a really nice project that sort of exposed this potential, I guess, like seeing all these different artists' sort of styles and how they would use the technology. That was the exciting part for me, just seeing what different people would do. So every page was like a little discovery for me, and indeed for everybody that's experienced the book. So you can see there's 3D artists and traditional 2D artists and a variety of animation techniques going on. Okay, and then we had an exhibition for it, and we started to play around with scale and blowing these artworks up into what we call now event-based AR. And this was a shopping centre in Sydney, and we had the artworks hanging from the buildings, and basically 3,000 people came down that day just to explore the whole shopping centre. And it was paid for by the shopping centre, so we added a bit of interactivity. If you activated all the artworks and put your email address in the end, you could win a voucher for one of the shops. So that was another way to get the artists paid, and we paid a licensing fee to all the artists to have their work featured again and that sort of thing. So not only are we trying to think about what's a cool interactive experience for the public and for the technology for the artists to create in, but we're trying to think about ways that we can continually get these artists paid for their hard work, which is super important to me. I'm trying to create a sustainable sort of industry. Okay, I'm going to keep moving on. I just want to mention this project quickly before we jump into the VR. This is a really personal project that's an online project. It's called TheseMemoriesWon'tLast.com. It's a story about my grandfather who suffered from dementia. I mention this story because it's been like a really important one that's kind of travelled the world now, and it's a story about my grandpa was losing his memory and I was losing my grandfather, but we're also losing access to the generation that my grandfather represents, and that's this important memory that's connected to World War II, that's connected to, my grandfather's from Hungary, and he had to flee the war and arrived in Australia as a refugee, so there's that narrative as well, and we're kind of losing that as well. So, but the way that I presented this online was, as you scroll down through the website, it activates the different animations, but then if you try to scroll back up, it's all disappeared. So it's this kind of painful realization of just the frailty of memory, but what it does at that moment that you're reading the story is it creates a bit of urgency to pay attention and to absorb the story in that moment, and just to savour kind of what a special story it is. And I could go on about that for another half an hour, but there's not enough time, so I urge you to check it out. It's free online at TheseMemoriesWon'tLast.com. Okay, so now we'll finally get into talking about virtual reality. So I had the privilege of using some VR gear about a year ago, and I really got hooked. So for everybody out there that's considering, I think it's like the birth of the internet again. I'm so excited about it. For me, it's the first time that I can stand inside my artwork as an artist and move around it. I'm using a program here called Tilt Brush, where I can hold onto the controllers and I'll do a brush stroke, but then suddenly I can move around that brush stroke and see it from the other side. And as I start to move through my own artwork, my neurons are firing because I've never seen it from all these different angles, so in real time, in a scale that's relevant to me. And I just find I can stay up all night just creating these artworks. I really feel so stimulated by the process. So I did that non-stop for 2 weeks when someone left the gear at my studio, and I started posting my artworks onto my Instagram account, and then Google saw them. Google make the program Tilt Brush, which is the VR painting program that I use, and then Google commissioned me to do some paintings for them, and that's what you just saw. And I did that whole painting that was just playing. There was actually 4 rooms in the one painting. The idea that Google wanted me to sort of expose to the public kind of the different aesthetics that you could achieve with this program. So I created 4 rooms. When you step in, you will see a little window there, and another window there, and another window behind you. And you can literally walk into each of those paintings and very quickly see these drastically changing aesthetics. And I just had to sort of explore the different sort of possibilities. But I only had a day and a half to create this thing. It was a kind of a crazy day and a half. But the fact that we can create 3D worlds in a day and a half is phenomenal. And I must say, I hate 3D programs, and I just don't like to use them. I hate going through menus, and quite frankly, at this moment in time, I don't even want to sit in front of a computer anymore, because I'm more active, restless person, and the idea that I can be moving around like this just makes so much more sense to my anatomy and my brain and everything. So we'll go more into VR. I'm a big enthusiast, obviously. But anyway, that Google project led into them introducing me to Marvel, and then I did a Doctor Strange promo where they filmed me painting on top of a building in Hong Kong to promote the release of the Doctor Strange film. And again, this time it wasn't 4 rooms. They wanted us to create 3 dimensions. They pretty much ripped off the Google project, but anyway. But this time, what was super exciting was that I co-created these worlds with 2 other artists from the US. And basically, I would work in Australian time zone, and I would upload my file, and when I was sleeping, they'd work on their side of the project, and then I'd wake up the next morning and be like, wow, look what they've created. And so that was super exciting. And then we got the public to walk into our dimensions that we created. And what you're seeing here is actually some other thing we'll talk about in more detail later, but it's mixed reality when you're filming both the virtual world and the physical world at the same time. And my collaborator, Jameis, is talking a little bit later on. He will totally nerd you out with all the information about mixed reality. I'm not going to go into it too much now, but I'll let Jameis cover it because he's a mixed reality guru who happens to be from Brisbane, so you're all very lucky. And this is actually Jameis filming me in mixed reality. And I must say, if you pay attention, Jameis has got a little camera mounted onto his Steadicam thing there. And that camera is mounted on a little robot that's programmed to follow my headset. And Jameis made that robot, and I think that's pretty genius because I'm always staying in the center of the frame as I paint in mixed reality. So from like a cinematographer point of view, that kind of is a super handy tool. And Jameis has got his little robot on display in this room here, so you can check that out in action later on. But anyway, this is me painting in virtual reality. The reason that you can see the painting and me in the same environment at the same time is because I actually painted a green screen in my painting, and then we keyed out the green screen in real time. It's a bit of a technical explanation, I guess, but it's a traditional technique that we've been doing for VFX for ages. But at the time, no one had thought to do it. And James and I was just sitting, I was like, what did we paint the green screen in there? And it worked, and we were super excited. So. And that got a great response. And then I'm just going to show you this one quickly. This one was a VR painting that I did in a painting battle in the Pause Festival in Melbourne. And I painted this whole piece in 26 minutes. It was like a crazy competition race kind of thing, but I won. But but the thing is, like, again, it just blows my mind that I kind of thought about it. I was like, I have to nail this because the prize was at the time a HTC Vive, and at that point, like, I was still borrowing my friend's Vive, so I was like really determined to win. So I thought about it a lot, like, how can I do it as fast as possible and make sure I win this thing? And they have certain things like a symmetry tool. So if I paint on one side, it automatically paints on the other side. So that quickly made me occupy this huge space really quickly, and I was only doing half the work in a way. So I thought that one out, and I had that upper edge on the other people. Anyway, so there's a bit of a pattern emerging with all of my work, and usually it surrounds me playing first. I play a lot. I just explore the possibilities of the technology, all the different aesthetics that I can achieve with that technology. And then I sort of come back to reality and go, well, I should probably do something a bit more meaningful with all these things that I've learnt. And so with the virtual reality tools, I had the opportunity this year to join the Sundance Institute Story Lab, which is a lab where we talk about new frontiers of storytelling. And I had proposed a project with my other collaborator, Charles, who's at the back, and he'll be on the panel this afternoon. We had a project called Mind at War, which was, I had actually had the fortune of meeting a US soldier, a young veteran who's suffering from post-traumatic stress when I was in the US last year. And I happened to be road tripping with my wife through the US, and we just was at this little campsite, and this young fella helped me make a fire, and then we just sat around the fire, and then suddenly he just spilled out his whole story, and it just blew my mind, and it didn't quite leave me. We continued on our road trip the next day, but it just kept staying in my mind. And I knew this opportunity was coming up to tell an important story in virtual reality. And I thought, holy shit, just imagine if I could teleport the audience to that campfire so they could all hear what this guy has just told me. And then from there it was like, and we could have those memories manifest out of the campfire and all around you, and suddenly you could see this trauma that this guy is carrying with him, almost like it's just a big echo of reality watermarked in and around him. And we just submitted our completed piece to Sundance like last week. So now our fingers are crossed that they'll accept the project. But it's been a labour of love for the last year, and lots of Skype interviews with the soldier. And we recorded his voice, so he tells the story. And I'll just show you a trailer for that project now.
When you sign up for the military, you know that you might witness death, but you never receive any training to learn how to cope with it. Man up, you little pussy, don't cry! I spent a lot of time alone in the arms room, replaying in my mind all of my failures. I was medically discharged from the military because they had diagnosed me with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay, so that's just a brief glimpse of the project, but basically, like, the guy was sent to Iraq with just about a year of training and sort of expected to kick down doors and shoot people if necessary, and it messed him up pretty good. And then he was discharged with PTSD and sent back to America, but after he returned to America, they didn't follow up on him, and he ended up becoming homeless for like 5 years. And when I met up with him, they had just found him, and he was just starting to receive his military pension to help him deal with the post-traumatic stress. So he was actually in what he thought was a good space. Me, I was like still completely shocked. But he was like, what really amazed me about his personality was that he was trying so hard to create these more positive memories to sort of fill up his mind. And he was going on these adventures through the US. So it was this opportunity to draw this balance of the traumatic memories, but also show the really beautiful images of where he's trying so hard to sort of cope with it. And we hope that it can be an important experience, that because the number of these soldiers that are suffering from PTSD is just staggering. And we just don't have enough sort of vehicles to help kind of tell that story. So we're hoping that this can be of sort of aid in that process. And I'm just about to wrap up. I'm sure I'm running out of time. But I just thought I'd finish off with a little fun piece that I did last week. And I did this in three hours. And this because I've just been watching Stranger Things Season 2 and was super excited about it. So I thought, shit, I'm going to go and draw the upside down. So I went and painted the upside down. And crank some music. Oh, what? Hey, wait up. Come on. Where's the music? Oh, you have to imagine the theme song, god damn it. Yeah. But anyway, you could see the upside down, so that was super fun. But I did that in one night, and then the next morning I got some calls from Hollywood to do some new stuff for some other productions. So I was like, it just helps just to have a crack at it and just put it out there and do the right hashtags and at Stranger Things TV or whoever's attention you're trying to get, and sometimes you get lucky. So anyway, that was a bit of a fun one to finish it off on. So thank you everybody, and I'll be around.